Good morning, I'm Bernie Diaz. You're watching Focus on South Florida. Last fall's Broward Boy Scouts gay controversy fueled the fire again of this nation's culture war, and today the battle rages on. Activists from both sides are strategizing now how to best gain advantage by winning the hearts and minds of their communities. Pro-homosexual rights leaders point to continuing tolerance among mainstream Americans of the lifestyle based on recent polls. Anti-gay rights advocates point to grassroots support of the Boy Scouts' right to associate, and in both Broward and Dade counties, movements are underway to repeal anti-discrimination ordinances that include sexual orientation. Today we'll focus in on that battle and other issues on the topic, such as a new study that could sway public opinion. That study says homosexuals can change their behavior. We'll explore that as well next. Welcome to Focus. A recent census poll reflects that America is perhaps more tolerant and accepting of the homosexual lifestyle than ever before. The media culture would certainly seem to endorse that view, and in addition, most large companies and many city and county municipalities offer same-sex benefits and rights. However, most Americans are still uneasy, say, about same-sex marriage, and aside from Vermont, no other country in the nation and few nations worldwide legally sanction it. Why is that? And where is society on the homosexual issues that face us today, and how will that impact you today? Let's focus on that with two of my guests. Robin Bodiford is an attorney, and she heads up the organization Americans for Equality, which is an organization in Broward that is trying to counter a petition drive by another organization we'll chat about in a second that means to repeal an anti-discrimination ordinance. Robin, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Bernie. It's nice to be here.
Great. And closest to Robin is a gentleman we've had on before with us, Anthony Verdugo, who is the president of Miami-Dade County's Christian Coalition and a volunteer with Broward's Equal Rights, Not Special Rights. They are a broad-based interfaith and nonpartisan citizens coalition attempting to collect some 90,000 signatures on a petition this year in the hopes of putting on the public ballot a referendum that would repeal the county's anti-discrimination ordinance as currently written, which includes sexual orientation, and this is what it looks like, this petition right there. I know you can't see that well, but just so you have an idea. Now, Anthony, let me start with you. Your group and its initiative, At Least Equal Rights as a group, that comes as a result of the Boy Scouts issue, does it? Is that right?
That's absolutely
And if so,
right.
make the connection for us.
Well, what happened was that a couple of months ago, the Boy Scouts were denied
Bernie, I'm
funding.
sorry, I have to interrupt here. This petition drive has nothing to do with the Boy Scouts. If you will take a look at the petition that you were showing to the audience, the Boy Scouts is not mentioned even once in the text of this petition. In fact, this
Bernie,
petition has
let me
nothing
shed some
to do,
light on the truth and allow me to answer the question,
nothing to do with the Boy Scouts.
Robin, with all due respect, you interrupted.
Let me give
Yes,
Anthony,
interrupted because you are terrified of the truth.
let me give Anthony the right
The
to
truth
just answer the
scares
question.
you.
Let's let
The
Anthony
truth
answer
scares
the
you.
question.
And
As to
the truth does
philosophically,
scare you.
what is the next step? That's what I'm talking about.
Let's talk about your answer, your question first of all. Let's answer your question. Your question was, does this have to do with the Boy Scouts? And Robin, if you'd be so kind, please let me answer the question fully. Number one, when Broward County pulled funding from the Boy Scouts, Broward County Commission, then Fort Lauderdale Commission also followed suit, to about $100,000. They pulled funding from a 191-year-old organization that is working in the community to restore our youth. They work with children who have disabilities, mental disabilities, and physical disabilities.
Bernie,
they
have
work
to
with children
object.
to
This
keep
is
them
not
out of
about-
drugs.
we know this is
So
not
they were
about the Boy Scouts.
right. So they were denied funding, and then they were kicked out of the schools by the Broward County School Board, all as a result of this law, of this ordinance. And that's what gave the impetus, and that is the connection. If this ordinance would be in existence, then the Boy Scouts would not have been defunded. They would not have been kicked out of the schools. Robin knows this to be the truth.
An incorrect statement.
But she'll deny it to the very end.
Robin, let me ask you.
They were cited. It's public
that the Broward schools did evict the Boy Scouts primarily on the basis of the county anti-discrimination ordinance?
No, the Broward County schools evicted the Boy Scouts on the basis of their own internal policy.
That's incorrect, Bernie. That's a lie.
As a result of their own internal policy. Now, I would like to just point out that Mr. Verdugo is not the representative from Equal Rights, Not Special Rights, which is a fallaciously named organization to start with. They might more properly be called cowards hiding behind the Boy Scouts. However, Mr. Verdugo is from the Christian Coalition in Miami. He is a person from outside of Broward County, coming here today to talk about repealing Broward County's human rights ordinance as it pertains to sexual orientation.
It's not a human rights ordinance, Robin.
It
It's a civil rights ordinance.
No,
but
it is not. It is
what
not.
happens, Bernie, what happens here is that they are going to deny the truth. This organization should be called not Americans for Equality and Power Broward. It should be called Overpower Broward, Disenfranchise Broward. Bernie, let me just say this. Let me just say this, Robin, and you're going to let me say this.
I think that you're interrupting
the
me.
The right to petition your government for redress of grievances is a basic constitutional right.
Issue.
Robin, let me ask you something. It says here decline to sign.
This is
Robin,
a petition.
It says here decline to sign. Let me ask you something, Robin.
The name Boy Scouts.
Why are you against the right to choose?
Why
are you against the right to choose?
Why are citizens of
Why
Broward
do you discriminate against the Boy Scouts?
Why are citizens
Okay, hold on a second. Because we're not
you
getting
took away
anywhere.
their funding and you kicked them out of our schools.
Okay, so
I'm not going to let you get away with the lie.
Should I yell over him? Because I could yell over him.
Go ahead, do what you want, Robin, but I'm not going to let you get away with the lie.
Anthony, hold on.
No, you're the liar. You're the liar.
Robin,
you're the liar.
Anthony,
you're the liar. You're the liar. I'm not going to let you get away with it.
Stop. I don't want to go to a commercial break here to restore peace. So let's just try to see if I can facilitate the flow. That's my job, and ask some questions, because we got a lot of ground to cover. Let me ask you this. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that, again, as you said, holding forth your position, that the Boy Scouts issue is over the school's policy, not the county policy. Let's go one step further. What philosophically, being that the Supreme Court guaranteed last summer in a decision the Boy Scouts' right to freely associate with whom they please and members,
absolutely,
and your group is about tolerance and rights, what problem is there in that?
I do not have a problem with the Supreme Court decision. They decided that the Boy Scouts, as a private organization, had the right to decide who its members would be, and they had a right to exclude gay boys, no matter how harmful that is to them, and to exclude gay masters. Okay,
So
they
you
had a
have no
right.
problem with that.
They had a right as a private organization.
Okay.
What they did not say was, and what they do not have, is a right to public funds and to use public facilities. However, we're not here today to talk about the Boy Scouts. I can talk about the Boy Scouts,
No, we're not.
but that is not the
We just
issue.
wanna
The
set
Boy
that
Scouts.
up.
Let me just, for the record, say that I think the Boy Scouts is a very good, venerable organization. Its leadership is misguided. However, I would like to talk about the petition referendum to legalize discrimination in Broward County
Well, let
today.
me ask Anthony very quickly in this segment, and I know you're doing something like this in Miami-Dade, what would the referendum, if passed, do? And also, how far along are you in the process of
Well, first of all, this unjust law that prohibits discrimination on so-called sexual orientation, which, by the way, sodomy is not a civil right. Let's start with that.
Oh,
so
please,
this is
let
a
us
flawed
not
law.
stop with
Number
that.
one.
We are not talking
and
about
Robin, are you going to let me
behavior?
speak, or am I
No,
going to
I'm
have
not
to
going to
continuously?
let you speak.
Well, I'm
Robin,
not going to let you speak
You
either.
answered a
So what do you
question,
think?
Robin.
I'm not
I
gonna let
have
you
to
speak
get
either.
Robin.
Well, then
I
we're not going to have a
sit
show,
here
are
and
we?
argue.
Robin,
Because you're telling a lie.
Listen, guys,
you're
hold
lying
on.
to the people.
Anthony, Robin,
You're lying
hold
to
on.
the people. I'm not going to let you speak.
Listen,
I will not allow
wait
you
a
to
second,
speak.
Anthony. I asked you a question, you answered it. Now I have to get this answer from Anthony,
And it
because
has
we're
to be
trying to find out.
uninterrupted, Robin.
They're putting forth, this organization is putting forth this petition. He should be the one to
petition says
answer
nothing
what it
about-
is
You are
supposed to do.
so scared.
Hold on,
Robin
Anthony,
is so
just tell me
scared
what
of the
would the
truth.
ordinance
No,
do?
I am trying
Just tell me
to
from your
put
position
forth
what
The
the
ordinance
ordinance
will
would do.
restore equal rights to everyone in Broward County, and it will not provide any special rights for anyone. What it will do is it will restore the legally protected, federally recognized categories that Congress and the Supreme Court have recognized.
Okay.
That's what this petition will do if it gets on the ballot and passes.
Okay, let's move ahead, because obviously we see this as a very contentious issue. We have a graphic we want to show you. That's really about the culture war, which is what we're seeing here, unfortunately enacted. And we have a public opinion poll, which recently has been showing a greater tolerance of gays in the community. 50% of the nation now agrees of it as an alternative lifestyle. There's the number in 92. 54% say relations should be legal, as opposed to just 43% in 1977. Anthony, isn't it true that numbers and new census data reflect the homosexual community is now winning this culture war and view the lifestyle as normative and that it should be tolerated?
Well, I disagree with you on 2 points there. Number one, because it depends on how the question is framed. That's number one. Number two, you have to look at Election Day. When these referendums go up for election, and just about a month ago in Royal Oaks, Michigan, which is a bellwether state, the people of Michigan voted 69 to 31% to repeal a special rights ordinance in their town. So that really is, public opinion is really Election Day when it's really formulated and expressed. What these polls simply say is that Americans don't want anyone interfering with their lives, and they're not going to interfere with anybody else's lives either, but they don't want to celebrate a dangerous and destructive lifestyle, and that's what Election Day shows.
Right after the break, Robin gets first chance. She'll respond to that. And the next question is we look at a new and controversial development in this debate. We'll be right back. Welcome back. One of the biggest factors that could determine whether homosexual rights increase or decrease in the future, and that could change the face of this debate, is whether homosexuality is proved to be a predetermined, largely genetic, immutable characteristic, such as a person's skin color or gender, or whether it is a personal behavior that is largely determined by personal choice. Speaking to that, a recent and controversial study by Columbia psychiatry professor Robert Spitzer indicates that homosexuals motivated to change can do so and leave the lifestyle. Robin Bodiford, who is the director of Americans for Equality in Broward. Dr. Spitzer once advocated back in 1973, as you know, the removal of homosexuality from the list of mental health disorders. He was key there. And now his research of some 200 ex-gays note that if they truly want to change their behavior, become heterosexual, they can. He notes that some may not want to, but those that want to can. What do you make of that, and how does that play into all this?
Well, basically, the Spitzer report has been recognized as being biased and highly unscientific in the manner in which it was conducted. In fact, Spitzer himself admitted that it was very difficult for him to find his subjects, and in fact, most of them were self-volunteered from so-called conversion therapies. It's interesting to note that of the 200 individuals who were questioned verbally, that was the extent of the study, was a verbal questioning. Of the 200, 72 of those people had attempted suicide previous to undergoing this conversion therapy. Conversion therapy itself has been discounted and discredited by the American Medical Association and the American Psychological Association. Basically, the individuals who volunteer themselves for this type of therapy are desperate people who are very insecure and are desperately trying to be heterosexual so that they can obtain the approval of these extremist right-wing political groups and or their churches. Okay. I think it's a pretty sad situation. Okay. But one thing I wanted to say, Bernie, is that you did say that I would have a opportunity to respond to the whole issue on the Gallup poll and the results in Oakdale or Royal Oak. The fact is that what you didn't report regarding the Gallup poll is that 85% of the people in America, according to the Gallup poll, don't believe that people should be discriminated against in the workplace based on their sexual orientation. And interestingly enough, a recent survey done in Broward County frequent voters found the same sentiments. 80% would not support discrimination against people in the workplace based on their sexual orientation. And the whole issue behind this petition gathering is that people are being presented by paid petition gatherers with 3 petitions. The first one is regarding drug rehab, the second one is regarding smaller class size, and the third one is quickly being shown to people and saying, sign this to save our scouts. And Broward County voters are being tricked. They're being deceived into signing petitions that they would not otherwise sign. We conducted a survey in Broward County of Broward County voters and it clearly indicated that over 70% would not sign that petition if they knew what it was that they were signing. And I would like to encourage the audience that's watching this morning to join in our effort to defeat this petition referendum. You can sign on to AmericansForEquality.org and find out how you can help us keep discrimination illegal in Broward County.
All right, let me move ahead. Anthony, very quickly, the Spitzer study hurts the cause.
Let me respond.
Very quickly.
They are so terrified. Extremist organizations are so terrified of the Spitzer study because it undermines everything they've always said, which is you can't change, you can't change, you can't change. What's interesting here is that if America is becoming more tolerant, why do we have more men and women than ever before running to these types of therapies, reparative therapy and conversion therapies? I'll tell you why. Because they are truly unhappy in their destructive lifestyle. And that's what Spitzer showed here. And he really shone some light on the truth. And the truth is that when homosexuals leave the lifestyle, those who desire to, we're not saying this is for everyone, but those who want to, they lead healthier and happier lifestyle. Okay. And that is a scientific fact. It cannot be refuted.
All right, well, let's follow up on that. Let's see, first off, talking about polls, what America feels about this question, and it's a very difficult one because obviously the scientific data is not all there. We want to see what America makes of this question, are people made or born gay? And 34% of Americans say they are. That number is up double from 1982, but less than a majority. And 44% of Americans say environmental and upbringing would be the cause, as opposed to 52% nearly 20 years ago. Now, last fall, as a follow-up, when the Boy Scout story first broke, we addressed this larger question of behavior and change. We interviewed a former avowed homosexual in Broward who had this to say about his choice and sexual orientation.
So the church stands up and points and says, you've chosen to act this way, don't stop it. Well, see, I don't believe that's correct. But then the homosexual says, and I don't, for the life of me, understand why they do this, I was born gay and I cannot change. They put themselves into this little box. They do themselves tremendous disservice by saying that the human mind does not have the potential to change. And I tell you, as one who has been out of the lifestyle now nearly 12 years, I do not bite my fingernails. I will never go back into the lifestyle because I understand what caused that situation to develop in my life.
That was from last September here on Focus. Robin, does homosexual orientation have to be eventually proven scientifically, which it hasn't been yet, to substantiate or to further help substantiate your argument as we move ahead in the rights debate?
I think not. I think, you know, if Mr. Phillips is happy in whatever he is doing, more power to him. The fact is that our society has significantly moved in the direction of tolerating diversity. The fact is, I mean, just with regard to conversion therapy, I mean, every gay and lesbian person that I have ever talked to in my life has a horrendous story of the wrenching experience it was to come out. We were all raised heterosexual, and when we realized that we were gay, it was not an easy thing. And the reason it was not an easy thing is because we live in a hostile and often harmful, discriminatory society. And that is why people like Mr. Phillips have felt they had to go to desperate ends to try to change what are their natural proclivities.
Let me just say, Mr. Phillips is a happy man, healthier and happier today than ever before. And if it were for Robin, she would have prevented him from seeking that type of help, because she has gone to the American Psychological Association and told them that if any psychologist engages in that type of therapy, they will be barred, they will have their license pulled, and that is the honest to God's truth. And let me just say regarding this petition that this organization is seeking to overpower and disenfranchise the voters of Broward County. They are lying, they are perpetuating a myth, half-truth, because they are telling people that they don't have the right to decide this. Robin, let me ask you one pointed question, and please answer it, and that is, what is so wrong with the right to choose? What is so wrong with letting people decide? Tell me what is wrong with that.
Very quickly, you got 30 seconds. You got 30 seconds to answer. Okay, stop it right there.
Tell me what is wrong with that.
Okay, Anthony, hold on.
What I have to say is that there is currently a petition drive in Broward County to deceive Broward County citizens into signing petitions that will end up costing taxpayers $600,000 for a special referendum to legalize discrimination in Broward County.
For
you're the only one that is
Anthony, stop. I'm going to ask the question. Let me ask
You're
the
the
question.
only one that's deceiving the people, Robin.
For reasons of time, let's say the petitions were legally found,
certified.
verified, signed off on, they weren't being paid, were mixed up with 2 others, would you have a problem with the people expressing their will to vote in Broward?
Absolutely not.
Then why do you
stop
tell
right
them
there.
not to sign?
That's going to end this segment. We come back, one final segment about another controversial side of this, and also a same-sex marriage question. That's coming up. Stay with us, and by the way, this content is not suitable for minors.
Maybe you should say.
According to a series of health studies, the homosexual lifestyle is one that may be proving again to be a physically dangerous one. HIV/AIDS has gained significantly in most gay communities, in particular among gay black men, and now there is a recent hepatitis outbreak among Broward homosexuals. This troubling news now points not only to a community health problem, but perhaps adds additional fodder to the argument that to support the gay lifestyle in law and culture is to support an unhealthy lifestyle. Is that true? Robin, 20 years, Robin Bodiford from Americans for Equality with us in Broward, an attorney. After the initial epidemic of AIDS 20 years ago, which began almost exclusively in the gay community, the government's now reporting infections among bisexual men 23 to 29, especially among blacks, is on the rise. We're seeing this epidemic among hepatitis, oral anal sex being mentioned as prime indicators. What does that say about what the gay community needs to do to counteract that, to deal with that, especially as they try to move forward with the equal rights issue, particularly when it becomes a kind of a public health concern to some?
Well, I think that it's a mistake to try to talk about AIDS and talk about civil rights and the right to have a job and not be fired because of your sexual orientation. Mm-hmm. I think naturally the increase being reported by the CDC in incidents of AIDS is alarming. I think that it's important to note that it's I think 46% of the new infections are among gay men. That means that 54% are among heterosexuals. I think it's interesting and important to note that 66% of the new infections among women are in the black community, and that fully 40% of the infections among men are in the black community. I do not think that HIV/AIDS infection is properly discussed in the context of a discussion of gay issues. HIV/AIDS is not only a national health problem in the general population, it's a problem in the world population.
Indeed.
And
Indeed.
I think that in the past, the reason that we haven't had a cure for AIDS is especially money being put into it in the United States is largely a result of the discrimination against gays and the perception that it's a gay disease.
I just don't want to take all the time in the segment on that question. Another question, reconcile for me an inconsistency with Anthony Verdugo as well, equal rights, not special rights from Broward. We talked about earlier the tolerance level changing in America, but yet gay marriage is not outside of Vermont being recognized, nor by most Americans. How do we have that inconsistency? On the one way, we tolerate it. When it comes to marriage, no.
Well, I think that, you know, it does seem that the American public still wants to think of marriage is typically seen as a religious-based institution. I think that if you break those polls down and you talk then more about civil unions, giving people the right to inherit, giving people the right to visit their loved ones, to visit their loved ones in health facilities, you're going to get a far different response from the American public.
Okay, 40 seconds. Anthony, your response to these issues?
Look, the reason that AIDS is increasing is because we're now tolerating homosexuality in our community even more. It's a dangerous and destructive lifestyle. People die from homosexuality because they engage in lifestyles that causes hepatitis, that causes AIDS, and that causes anal and rectal cancer, and so many other horrible diseases. What we need to do is reach out to homosexuals with the truth in love, and that's something that extremists will not allow us to do. And this is not an issue of discrimination. Let me just say this. They have never been able to show a business or anywhere that legalizes discrimination against homosexuals.
Okay.
Homosexuals have the same rights, not special rights.
Okay, that's the last word. Thank you both for being here. On behalf of my guests, Robin Bodiford and Anthony Verdugo and Bernie Diaz.